This is the Cyprus News Digest with Rosie Haralambous.
Coming up on this week's programme, the humanitarian aid ship finally set sail from Larnaca for Gaza.
The most important thing is that this shipment is the first after almost 20 years of naval blockade in Gaza.
We talk about the Shriners doctors who've been in Cyprus but operate all over the world.
To be able to provide care for not only the children here on Cyprus, but the children here in the region.
Our thing is we're changing the world one child at a time.
And with a large percentage of the soil in the European Union degraded, there are plans afoot to introduce legislation that will mean countries must clean it up.
For pollution, by 2050 it seems very unlikely, and it's a long process.
The ship that's been docked in Larnaca for several days now finally left this week for Gaza. It's taking aid for the Palestinians there, and it's part of the Amalthea Larnaca to Gaza sea corridor that has been much touted both at the EU and, of course, here in Cyprus. Now, the Foreign Ministry is dealing very closely with this, and their spokesman joins us now. Theodoros Gortsis, thanks for your time. Tell us a little bit more, if you will, about, first of all, why the delay? We thought it was going to leave on Friday, and finally, I think it left on Tuesday.
Thanks, first and foremost, for your kind invitation. Yes, the ship has sailed yesterday. The only issue that was under consideration was the scheduling time. From our part, till Sunday, everything was ready and the approvals had been granted. In any case, the most important thing is that this shipment is the first after almost 20 years of naval blockade in Gaza. Therefore, all the aspects involved had to be checked with the due diligence and very carefully before being in a position to have the ship going to Gaza.
Now, the big problem is, how is it going to unload? Because Gaza doesn't have a port, does it?
Yes, but since the very beginning of this initiative, we were saying that our initiative is not port conditional, because as we know from the shipment that the first shipment that went indirectly through port side in Egypt in cooperation with the Royal Navy of the United Kingdom back in January, the aim of Amalthea plan is to supplement and support existing routes, and the main element is the possibility for inspection in Cyprus that is up to the expectations of the Israeli side, so as after the conclusion of those inspections to be able to transfer any aid directly or indirectly to the people in need. So the humanitarian aspect comes first.
Just clarify for me then, where is this ship and this aid going to dock?
The specific point will not be announced, of course, for security reasons, but the NGO itself, the World Food Kitchen, has already published online some material about the preparations on the ground and the building of a basic jetty, so as for the platform that is moved by the open arms vessel currently to be able to unload these almost 200 tons of food, water and basic medical supplies that it includes.
But it is going to dock in Gaza, or the food and the aid is going to be offloaded directly into Gaza. It's not going to Egypt.
No, it goes directly to Gaza, yes, exactly. And then the coordination of the ground is done by the NGO itself.
And they presumably have people
has
on...
a huge presence on the ground already, and has provided some 2 million meals since the beginning of this war to the people of Gaza.
So they themselves will be supervising the security, because I think we all know that people are so hungry in Gaza, there tends to be a lack of security. People are desperate to grab whatever they can.
On this aspect, Cyprus, of course, is part of the discussions, but we are not part of the decision-making regarding this issue. And at this point, it's critical to have in mind that the main development we had on Friday was the joint statement of intent between the European Commission, Cyprus, other EU member states, regional partners with UAE as the most prominent and helpful into that direction, and of course international partners such as the United States and the United Kingdom. Therefore, this shows that we have the political framework on which to base the operationalization of the plan and the synergies and cooperation that we will have with these countries. And this is reflected to today's, we will have later in the afternoon, tonight, a first video teleconference between the foreign ministers of the participating countries. Of course, Minister Kombos will participate, and also Secretary Blinken will be online to set this framework and move towards a senior officials meeting that has to take place in Nicosia very soon, so as to continue these operational discussions and be in a position to build more capacity and more frequency in this effort, which is our ultimate goal.
And that is key, isn't it? Because although it's great that 200 tonnes is going in, I think before October last year, something like 10,000, or was it even more tonnes, was needed daily, and that was before there was a conflict.
Exactly. That's why we emphasize that this is a supplementary effort. President Christodoulidis underlined back on Friday when the president of the commission was visiting Cyprus, that all available routes need to be operationalized, and our effort is supplementary to those efforts, and we have to always hail and acknowledge the immense efforts by Egypt and by Jordan all this time. And of course our coordination with them will continue, and that was the other part in developing this plan, with the shuttle diplomacy by both President Christodoulidis and Minister Kombos, all those months that predated the announcement on Friday, meetings with their counterparts from all the countries in the region and all partners that are involved in this project.
Right, now let's talk, if we may, a little bit about the US's contribution, because as far as I'm aware, a ship has left America, it's heading towards Gaza, and they're planning to build some sort of a jetty. Can you tell me more about that? Because once that's in place, as long as it isn't attacked in any way, one assumes that that means finally a blockade of Gaza, which, as you said at the beginning, has been going on for many, many years, may be lifted.
What the US has pledged to do, and that, as you say, there is public information on the movement and the preparations that they are doing, is to build a temporary pier at a certain point in Gaza. Of course, that's a US initiative, and we're not involved in any way in these preparations, but this shows again that you need to have regional, international partners on board. The European Commission, DG ECHO, has sent a team yesterday in Cyprus that joins our efforts from today, also UNOPS as well. So we need to build also capacity at the basis of this effort and bring more and more people on board so as to have it for the medium and long term if need be. We are here to support the dire humanitarian situation on the ground to alleviate that as soon as possible with all our partners.
A temporary jetty. One has to ask, why would it be temporary? Does this mean that if America or any of the partners thinks that, OK, that's it, it's all right now, they can remove it and we go back to blockade?
Obviously, that's very practical. You need something temporary so as to build it very quickly. That means that's connected to the temporary part, obviously. That's a logical explanation.
So you don't think that there will be a permanent jetty there so that they can finally, they have a coastline for heaven's sakes, they can finally use their coast?
The important thing is to have a pier that allows large quantities to be unloaded as soon as possible. And obviously the United States have the relevant capabilities to build a pier that will be in a position to handle more and more quantities coming in.
OK, I have to say that when I read about that, I was a little surprised at the amount of time it was going to take them to build this jetty, because if you look back at World War II, the US Army was building bridges across German rivers in 16 hours.
Obviously, the time frame includes the ship moving from the east coast to the eastern Mediterranean. This will take also some time, and this is included in this time frame.
All right, I can't keep you much longer, I know. Will you just tell me if you know of any plans to increase the number of ships that can then use these facilities? Because it's quite clear that for the moment, protesters at the Rafah crossing, Israeli protesters, are preventing many of the trucks, which is obviously the sensible way to get as much aid in as possible. They're preventing them from entering. So we need, don't we, a flotilla of ships using this Amalfi corridor.
And that's why we focus on our fair share, which is the hub in Larnaca, the storage capacity, the inspection mechanism to be up and running as soon as possible so as to sustain these needs as we move forward.
Actually, that just brings me to one other final question. I promise this is the last. We are close allies with Israel, are we not, Theodoros? Why is it that they don't seem to trust our people to do these inspections ourselves?
Of course, there is trust among countries that have bilateral relations and cooperation, and that's why this procedure is done by Cypriot customs officials, and obviously
supervised by Israelis.
It's not supervised. The country that has the effective control of the ground has the right to be observing this procedure so as not to have any other security considerations from their part on arrival.
Okay.
This expedites the process, and that was the effort, to have an expedited process so as to finish this inspection procedure as soon as possible. And I mean inspection to be the last part that will be a matter for consideration, and that happened already with both the UK shipment back in January and current shipment. The whole inspection process was smooth, and we didn't have to confront any problem whatsoever.
Okay, that's great news. Theodoros, many thanks for your time. Have a good day.
Thanks again. You too.
Keep up to date with events in Cyprus and around the world with the Cyprus News Digest.
As we heard on last week's programme, doctors from the Shriners Children's Hospital were in Cyprus last week, and at a reception I caught up with the Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer for Shriners, John McCabe, along with Jerry Gant, President of the Board of Directors and Chairman of the Board of Trustees. I first asked John how he saw the Cyprus end of Shriners' work progressing.
I see an opportunity here for Shriners Hospitals for Children to work collaboratively with the local physicians, nurses, therapists, for us to work with the facilities here to be able to provide care for not only the children here on Cyprus, but the children here in the region. And I think it's going to last. I think this is going to go on and on and on. It's already gone on for 43 years, so why not for another 143 years?
And let me come to you. I think there's a lot of collaboration as well in training, and let's face it, medicine moves on so fast and techniques move on so fast. Can you talk to me a little bit about that?
Certainly. Our mission for the last 100 years at Shriners Hospital for Children has been threefold. One, the obvious of treating the children, the research, and the teaching. And we feel like if you research it, you teach it, and then you deliver the medicine, you give the very best and the highest quality, safe delivery care you can give. And so our thing is we're changing the world one child at a time. So what we come here with is to try to make the health care in Cyprus, not just the child, obviously the child today that's having spine surgery is important to us. The success of that child and what she will do the rest of her life depends on what happens today. But that is only the one piece. The whole piece is to change the quality of health care in this part of the world and around the world. That children will have the benefit of better health care as we move forward. Because, as John said in his speech tonight, it's all about the kids, because the kids are our future. And so we need to take care of those children.
I could just add to that, the collaboration between the local physicians and our physicians is key. We learn from them and they learn from us. And so when you bring those professionals together under one roof, you're going to improve the healthcare capabilities of not only Cyprus but also Shriners.
And of course, medicine and technology are moving forward apace. Now, obviously, I would suspect that the US has much greater ability to keep up with that. Cyprus is a small country with a limited budget, so how can that play into the cooperation that we have?
Certainly, not only from a research perspective, but also from a technology perspective. We invest a lot of money, as does the entire country of the United States, into technologies for healthcare. Those technologies have proliferation where you can take those technologies and bring them here. You can also teach physicians new techniques because of those technologies. One of the things that are on the horizon right now is artificial intelligence. We have a very robust genomics program, and one of the things that artificial intelligence hopefully will be able to do is to cipher through a lot of that data and then bring you something that it can then be verified and researched by human beings, but in a way that then can be brought to the bedside so that the quality of care goes up, the safety of care goes up, and then the proliferation of that knowledge is spread worldwide.
And the time required to go through the data is cut by millions.
Yes, exactly.
So let me talk a little bit about our region. At the moment, we know it's a very troubled region, and an awful lot of children who could benefit from the expertise of the Shriners doctors, they're not in Cyprus. What, if anything, can you do to widen your scope?
Well, we obviously treat children from 170 countries, so there's a lot of turmoil at times throughout the entire world. I think what we try to do is stay as apolitical as possible. We want to work, our mission is children. It doesn't matter where or how they come to us. But we want to make sure that those children get the best care possible. So between collaborating with local providers, as well as the ability to, and we've done it before, airlift children to the United States for life-saving, life-altering care. We do that too, and we fund that. And we have other nonprofits that help us fund the airlifting and the support for families. And I think because of our long history and the fact that we frankly don't take sides in any of this. We have the benefit of having a lot of other institutions that want to help our mission too, which is to take care of the children. And so we practice medicine much larger than we really are, because we collaborate with and work with so many great providers throughout the world that we can, through telehealth as well as through being here physically like we are this week, we can do a lot more for children around the world together.
And can I come back to you finally and ask about the funding? I mean, this is not a cheap operation by any manner of means, so where does the money come from?
Well, with our fraternity is 150 years old, our hospital system's over 100 years old. And during the 150 years of the philanthropy, we've been able to raise money and build a substantial endowment fund, which helps support what we do around the world. And certainly most of the money has been raised in the United States, but there's a feeling of we can have a greater impact around the world by being able to take what we have learned through research, what we learned through teaching, to be able to have a greater impact in raising the quality of care for health care around the world for children. It's no different in the United States. It's from a revenue standpoint, you get more out of adults than you do children, so sometimes the children get bypassed. We try to fill that gap. We try to make sure children come first. So we only treat, in Shriners Hospital for Children, our admission policy is from birth to 18 years of age, and we treat them up to 21. So we concentrate on what's about the children, and we know, again, that's our future, and we're going to make those children not only in a better physical state, but in a better frame of mind. We have the ability to instill in them that they can do. They may have some physical challenges, but in a different way, they're going to do anything that anybody else can do. So we have former patients that have gone on to do incredible things.
We were talking to Jerry Gant, President of the Board of Directors and Chairman of the Board of Trustees of Shriners Hospitals for Children, along with John McCabe, Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer.
This is the Cyprus News Digest with Rosie Haralambous.
Around 60 to 70% of European soils are estimated to be in an unhealthy state. That's due to issues like urban expansion, low land recycling rates, intensification of agriculture, and, of course, climate change. Now, you may recall that on last week's programme, we spoke to a soil biologist, so I asked him to join me back on this week's programme, since this popped into my email earlier in the week. It's a welcome back to the programme to Nicolas Netien. Nicolas, they're obviously worried in Europe about the state of our soil because they say that the drivers are climate and biodiversity crises that we really have to address. And they've come up with some ideas, but I'm not sure how they're going to implement them. They want to get the health of soils in line with EU zero pollution, and I think that's by 2050. How on earth are they going to do it?
Well, it's actually not that difficult to do it practically on the ground, if I may say, but the issue is changing practices. There's two different issues there. We have pollution, so old industrial sites, and in that case, it can be a bit more complex, and it really depends on the type of pollutions. We do have what we call phytoremediation, where we use plants and biomass and biology to clean up some of the soil, but that's usually a long process, and it really depends on the type of pollution. So for pollution, by 2050, it seems very unlikely, and it's a long process. For degradation, so there's all sorts of degradation. So we have erosion that can come from water erosion or air erosion. That's a bit easier. We have degraded our soils usually through agriculture and agriculture practices, so tilling, use of pesticides and chemical fertilizer, use of herbicide, which is a very, very difficult issue We know that glyphosate, which is the most used product in agriculture today, which is a herbicide, so that kills weeds, stays for a very, very long time in the soil. And actually, it's everywhere. It's not only in our soil, it's in our water, it's in our bodies, it's in our food, it's everywhere. And the EU has failed to protect its citizens by failing to ban this product for many, many years. And we have tons of scientific evidence to show the devastating effects of that specific chemicals.
Not least the fact that it kills bees, doesn't it?
Glyphosate can. We have neonicotinoid that it's a pesticide that is more harmful, and we did ban some in some countries, and then we went back, like in France, my country, for example, they went back to reauthorize some of those pesticides for the beetroot culture, for sugar making. So we're up against really powerful lobbies, and it's going to be a tough one. When it comes to the actual practice of restoring soil, it's not that difficult. We know how to do it. And it really depends where you are, what is your climate, what is your growing season. So if you are in northern climate, in colder climate, where you have slower cycles, usually you have deeper soil, but it takes a longer time. If you are in a warmer climate, you have shallower soil. It can restore faster.
The email I got said that the new law they're proposing will oblige EU countries to first monitor and then assess the health of all soils in their territory. How on earth do you go about doing that?
Well, there's many ways to do it. We from actually taking samples of soil and doing characterization all the way to satellites. We can measure many things now with satellites. It's actually quite precise and it's very, very effective, especially for larger areas. For pollution, obviously, you need to take physical samples of the soil. But for degradation, for the thickness of the topsoil, where we grow our food, what we all depend on is those first 15 centimeters of topsoil. We can do that by satellite.
So it's very doable for a place the size of Cyprus, I imagine. And does that mean that the presumably Environment Ministry will be mapping out the areas that we need to address fastest, and then using this soil management toolbox that the EU says it's going to provide to support the implementation of this?
Yeah, well, it's nice to have a toolbox, but we need the means to implement it. For example, one of the fastest growing new technique of agriculture is called no-till farming. It doesn't mean it's organic, it doesn't mean it's 100% regenerative and ecologic and stuff, but it does a lot for the soil. And those techniques, they need to be implemented. They need very specific machineries. It actually needs less machinery and less tractor work than what we do now, the traditional way of tilling, seeding, harvesting, and tilling again. But to implement that, we need to first train the farmers. And to train the farmers, we need to have farmers to start with. Because the major issue we have is the aging population of farming. So 80% of our farmers are 65 and above. So training those guys, it's a bit harder than train new farmers. But we don't really have new farmers coming up. It's a major issue, and it's not only in Cyprus, it's all over Europe. So we need to train farmers, we need to find farmers, then train them, then give them the means to change their practices.
It sounds to me like your no-till farming is a bit like no-dig gardening, is that right? The worms get a chance to do their thing and the soil is left to regenerate itself.
Yes, it's slightly more complex than that because you have to have cover crop that you flatten up in the middle. But it's basically the same practice. We do not destroy the structure of the soil where the biology happens. We do not destroy the life of the microorganisms in the soil.
And we don't destroy the ecosystems either, which are so important. Very quickly, finally, if this is all implemented, will it actually mean that farmers get a better yield because of the soil quality?
At the beginning, they need to be very careful at what they're doing. But most importantly, they get way better at drought resilience, because organic matter in the soil is like a sponge, so it holds water much more than a soil that has no or very low organic matter content.
Be very interesting to see how Cyprus implements this new law when it comes into being. Nicholas, always a pleasure talking to you, and many thanks for your time.
Same here, thank you.
That's soil expert and environmental engineer Nicolas Netien talking there about the proposals to improve the soil in the European Union. Well, that about wraps up this edition of the Cyprus News Digest. Many thanks for your company. Hope you'll join me next week. Till we meet again, take care and God bless. Bye-bye now.